I was halfway through tuning when he walked in like he owned the apartment. The living room smelled like cigarette smoke and the cheap cologne he always used on important days, the kind of smell that meant he wanted attention, not conversation. I didn't look up. My fingers were steady on the fretboard because music was the only place my hands knew how to be quiet and write. "Turn that off," he said. It wasn't a request. It had the flat, expectant tone he used when he wanted obedience. I didn't stop. I tightened the low E and played the chord again, slow because I needed to hear it the way it should sound. Mason was in the next room coloring, his small noises like a soft count of ordinary things. My guitar was secondhand and battered at the edges, more history than instrument, but it was mine. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video. He came closer. Up close, Dad was all shadow and anger contained. That silence that meant his next move would be measured and ugly. He leaned the side of his body against the couch and looked at me like I had disappointed him in some slow-motion way he had been rehearsing my whole life. "You owe my friend a favor," he said. "He's throwing a private thing. He wants entertainment. You'll play. You'll be grateful for the opportunity." He didn't say please. He never said please when it was about other people's expectations. I kept playing a progression under my breath and said, calm, "I'm not playing that set. Not tonight. I'm teaching Mason his letters." His face shifted in a way I recognized. Flash of temper, then practiced control. "You can't refuse me," he said quietly, the way a man says something when he knows others will back him. "You don't understand what opportunities mean to people like us." I didn't argue. I set the tuner down and crossed my arms. "I won't perform at your friend's party. I won't be an act on his playlist." His jaw clicked. "You're an embarrassment. You always were. You think this guitar is some kind of trophy? It's a tool. Do it." My voice was low when I said it. "No." He laughed, a sound with no humor. "You're nothing without us," he said. The words landed like an order. They'd said variations of that since I was a kid, a lullaby of their superiority. That night was supposed to be small, his friend's backyard gathering. I said no because I knew what his events meant. Forced applause, people who measured my worth by how well I entertained their drinks. I said no because Mason had a fever and he needed pancakes, not some stranger's applause. I said no because I had begun learning how to place my life around things that didn't cost me pieces of myself. He moved fast then, not shouting, not yet. He took the guitar from where it leaned against the chair. I lunged without thinking, my hands closing on the neck, but he was stronger. He yanked it from me and shoved me backwards. The strap snapped across my ribs like a small whip. Mason cried out down the hall and the sound tore something in my chest. "Give it," he hissed. "Play." I pulled back my hand and pushed his arm, the angle awkward and desperate. The guitar's wood hit the floor with a hollow sound, and I felt the air in the room tilt. He stepped over it and picked it up like it was a trivial object, like my hands had no history with it. "Play," he repeated softer this time, wet with disgust. I stood, breath coming fast. My head felt hot and hollow. I pointed at the hallway. "Mason is sick. I said no." He shoved the guitar toward me hard enough that the strap dug into my collarbone. That was the moment his friend's name left his mouth, because he couldn't stand being refused in public context without him having an ally. And the world narrowed to the wood of the guitar and the look in his eyes that meant he would break something to make the point. I refused again. The word left me small. I felt ridiculous saying it aloud. He snapped. Not with a roar, but with a calculated motion. He brought the guitar up and slammed the body down, not at some empty spot on the floor, but directly onto my skull. The sound was ugly and immediate, wood against bone and something that felt like a bell in my head. For a second I tasted metal. Pain exploded in a bright electric ignition behind my eyes. I collapsed, one hand instinctively going to my head where warmth spread like someone had poured tea over me. Mason screamed, and then the apartment was suddenly full of a noise that didn't make sense. Dad didn't move as if he had made a mistake. He stood over me and said, plain, "You get what you deserve." My skull rang. I saw the guitar laying in pieces. The neck snapped, tuners twisted, strings flayed like paper. It looked like something that had been turned inside out. It had been everything I'd had when I had nothing else. He bent and picked up a fragment of wood and waved it near my face like a proof of his authority. "You think you're special," he said. "You're not. You never were." I crawled away from him because the floor felt like betrayal. Mason was hyperventilating in the doorway, clutching a stuffed animal so tight his knuckles were white. Mom came into the room then, not rushing, not concerned, but with a slow look of annoyance, as if I had caused a stain on her evening dress. She said, "Cool. He's right. You always choose drama. Just go. Take your little temper tantrum and go away." They expected me to leave. They expected I would fold because that was the pattern my whole life. When they harmed me, physical or otherwise, the script was that I would apologize eventually. I would reassemble myself in silence. But that pain under the wood was different. Physical, yes, but more. A clean, sharp recognition that this was not an accident or a one-off. It was a lesson in arithmetic, what they could take from me and what it cost them. They had broken an object that carried my voice. They had made sure I could not perform tonight, and they had made sure I would know why. I bundled Mason in a blanket and left. I didn't wake neighbors. I didn't call for help. I walked down the street with the guitar case, now empty save for splinters, like a small coffin, and held my son like a commitment that didn't bend to terror. We slept in a motel that night. I propped an ice pack to my head and held Mason while he shivered from fever, and I felt a grinding anger that wasn't about immediate pain. It was broader, an old tally being counted into a present where I could finally see the math. After dawn, I took the fragments of the guitar and arranged them on the motel bed like evidence. Each splintered piece pulled memory with it. The first chord I learned, the song I wrote for my mother's birthday and never sang because she changed the subject, the time I played at a free open mic to a table of strangers who applauded like it was oxygen. I had built a life around sound, and someone had shattered that in seconds as if it were a trivial thing. I didn't cry then. The motel room smelled like bleach and cheap coffee. I felt a coldness settle in, not peace, not numbness, a narrow concentration. They said I was nothing without them. The stunt with the guitar was a proof they trusted. The guitar was my last visible rebellion. I kept thinking of Dad's words. "You're nothing without us." It echoed like a verdict. I held Mason, and it felt like a refusal to accept that verdict for him or myself. I packed a bag. I left their keys on the kitchen counter of the apartment when I returned with a friend to fetch a few things. I locked the door behind us. Outside, they shouted my name and called for me to come back. Dad said, in front of everyone on the stoop, "You'll never make it without us. You think you can do this alone." His voice was loud and small at the same time, full of the cruel certainty of someone who's measured their control for years. I answered nothing then. I just walked. That night, I sat on a park bench with Mason asleep in my lap and realized the collision had done something sharp and clean inside me. Whatever I did next could not be built around their permission. The guitar lay broken, but the songs weren't gone. They were just files waiting for different hands to touch them. And if I wanted another life, one where the man who broke my guitar could not break me again, I had to start rebuilding with a different set of materials. I held Mason tighter. The night wind moved through the trees like a slow exhale. I planned practical and cold, not revenge in a poetic sense, but a calculation. They had used a guitar to show me my place. I would use other tools to change whose hands held the stage. Finding a place to restart wasn't glamorous. It was me doing DoorDash runs with an ice pack in my hood, renting a tiny room above an auto shop, and recording scratch demos in a storage unit at night while Mason slept in his portable crib beside me. It wasn't pretty, but it was quiet, and quiet had value. Quiet meant I could hear myself think without being told who I am. I didn't go to the police. I didn't go back to negotiate. I didn't go beg for apologies that never existed. I went to the people who actually respected music. I found one small indie venue, this hole-in-the-wall bar that did Wednesday songwriter nights. The owner heard one of my demos and said, "You're raw, but this is real." And real was enough to start. Within 5 months, I had steady gigs, I wasn't famous, I wasn't viral, but I had my own bookings that came from my skill, not from my father's humiliation circuit. The regulars started requesting songs. I sold 14 handmade CDs in one night, and I remember thinking that was the first time in my life a thing I made stayed whole, not broken. Meanwhile, my sister kept failing audition after audition, and my parents? Their clique started collapsing. Dad's friends liked performers they could brag about. When I didn't show up anymore, they moved on. Suddenly, Dad didn't have a talent puppet to parade. Their social currency started bleeding out slow and ugly. Then one afternoon, 6 months later, Dad found where I was playing. He showed up outside the venue. Not furious this time. Needy. Almost trembling. His contact web had burned out. His friend group didn't care anymore. He needed me to perform for someone big he had promised. He needed me to validate him again. He stood outside the alley door and said it in the same flat tone he used before. "I need you tonight. Don't make this worse. I made your career possible." I stared at him with a calm that scared him more than screaming ever would. "You broke everything I built," I said. "You don't get access to anything I rebuild." He glared, but I could see the panic behind his eyes. He knew this time. The control wasn't his. I walked inside the venue and shut the door in his face like he was a stranger, and that was the first time in my entire life. He realized I wasn't coming back to their script. 2 weeks later, my father tried again. This time, he didn't come alone. He showed up at my tiny apartment above the auto shop with my mother and my sister standing slightly behind him like an arranged formation. Like they rehearsed the stance in the car. He didn't yell. He didn't scream. He tried acting civil, like I was supposed to erase a lifetime because he switched tone. "We need you to play for an investor showcase," he said. "This is important for us. This could fix everything. You owe this family your loyalty." That one sentence told me everything. They didn't want me back as a daughter. They wanted my skill as a currency again. They wanted access to what I rebuilt. My mom crossed her arms, eyes sharp. "If you walk away again, don't expect us to ever help you when you fall apart. You think these bar gigs mean you're somebody now?" My sister smirked. "You're forgettable without us. You always were." I didn't respond emotionally. I walked inside calmly, grabbed the one thing that symbolized every chain they ever had on me, my broken guitar pieces I saved that night. The wood still cracked, strings bent like twisted wire. I held the pieces like evidence. "You broke what I loved to control me," I said quietly. "So here's how this goes now." I went to my small lockbox, the one where I kept the restraining order paperwork I already prepared months ago with HR and with my attorney contact from the Music Bar Network. I handed them copies, signed, confirmed, filed. "This is permanent legal cutoff. You come near my workplace again, my home, my gigs, you'll deal with the consequences you earned." My father's face dropped. He didn't think I'd ever have the nerve. He didn't think I'd ever be the one holding the leverage. "You wouldn't dare," he whispered. "You can't survive without us." "I already did," I answered. My mom tried to walk forward like she could intimidate me back into compliance. "You're insane," she hissed. "No," I said. "I'm free." I shut the apartment door in their faces and locked it with the deadbolt, and I didn't tremble. I didn't cry. I didn't second-guess myself. 3 months later, I got offered a small touring slot opening for a mid-tier indie band. Paid, contracted, professional. Not glamorous, but real. And this time, nobody could take credit for it but me. They tried calling. They tried messaging from different numbers. They tried sending relatives to guilt me. They tried telling everyone I abandoned them. But everyone already saw the shift. They needed me, not the other way around. I never returned any contact. I never allowed access again. Revenge wasn't a metaphor. Revenge wasn't silence. Revenge was removing the privilege of using me as currency for the rest of their lives. And the day I stepped onto my first tour stage, plugging in my own guitar that I bought with my own hands, with my own money, with my own rebuilt confidence, that was the moment I knew the story ended exactly where I wanted. I tuned my guitar, looked out into the crowd, adjusted my mic, and felt no weight attached to their names anymore. This time, the music belonged to me. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video.